Welcome to this reading of New Moon with relaxing rain sounds in the background to help you get down to sleep. This is my podcast of softly spoken stories and audiobooks, and you can hear this entire audiobook right now on Patreon at patreon.com/downtosleep. But please do hit like and subscribe for more free readings right here on YouTube, and you can also listen to this podcast on Spotify and everywhere you get podcasts. Find all the links and the info that you need about me and this podcast below this video. But now, let's tuck you in. Take a nice deep breath for me, and let's get down to sleep. New Moon by Stephanie Meyer. I stopped in front of Jacob's house, killing the motor and rolling down the windows. It was stuffy today, no breeze. I put my feet up on the dashboard and settled in to wait. A movement flashed in my peripheral vision. I turned and spotted Billy looking at me through the front window with a confused expression. I waved once and smiled a tight smile, but stayed where I was. His eyes narrowed. He let the curtain fall across the glass. I was prepared to stay as long as it took, but I wished I had something to do. I dug up a pen out of the bottom of my backpack and an old test. I started to doodle on the back of the scrap. I'd only had time to scrawl one row of diamonds when there was a sharp tap against my door. I jumped, looking up, expecting Billy. "What are you doing here, Bella?" Jacob growled. I stared at him in blank astonishment. Jacob had changed radically in the last weeks since I'd seen him. The first thing I'd noticed was his hair. His beautiful hair was all gone, cropped quite short, covering his head with an inky gloss like black satin. The planes of his face seemed to have hardened subtly, tightened, aged. His neck and his shoulders were different too, thicker somehow. His hands, where they gripped the window frame, looked enormous, with the tendons and veins more prominent under the russet skin. But the physical changes were insignificant. It was his expression that made him almost completely unrecognizable. The open, friendly smile was gone like the hair. The warmth in his dark eyes altered to a brooding resentment that was instantly disturbing. There was a darkness in Jacob now, like my son had imploded. "Jacob?" I whispered. He just stared at me, his eyes tense and angry. I realized we weren't alone. Behind him stood 4 others, all tall and russet-skinned, black hair chopped short just like Jacob's. They could have been brothers. I couldn't even pick Embry out of the group. The resemblance was only intensified by the strikingly similar hostility in every pair of eyes. Every pair but one. The oldest by several years, Sam, stood in the very back, his face serene and sure. I had to swallow back the bile that rose in my throat. I wanted to take a swing at him. No, I wanted to do more than that. More than anything, I wanted to be fierce and deadly. Someone no one would dare mess with. Someone who would scare Sam Ugly silly. I wanted to be a vampire. The violent desire caught me off guard and knocked the wind out of me. It was the most forbidden of all wishes, even when I only wished it for a malicious reason like this, to gain an advantage over an enemy, because it was the most painful. That future was lost to me forever, had never really been within my grasp. I scrambled to gain control of myself while the hole in my chest ached hollowly. "What do you want?" Jacob demanded, his expression growing more resentful as he watched the play of emotions across my face. "I want to talk to you," I said in a weak voice. I tried to focus, but I was still reeling against the escape of my taboo dream. hissed through his teeth. His glare was vicious. I'd never seen him look at anyone like that, least of all me. It hurt with a surprising intensity, a physical pain, a stabbing in my head. Alone, I hissed, and my voice was stronger. He looked behind him, and I knew where his eyes would go. Every one of them was turned for Sam's reaction. Sam nodded once, his face unperturbed. He made a brief comment in an unfamiliar liquid language. I could only be positive that it wasn't French or Spanish, but I guessed that it was Quiut. He turned and walked into Jacob's house. The others, Paul, Jared, and Embry, followed him in. Okay. Jacob seemed a bit less furious when the others were gone. His face was a little calmer, but also more hopeless. His mouth seemed permanently pulled down at the corners. I took a deep breath. You know what I want to know? He didn't answer. He just stared at me bitterly. I stared back and the silence stretched on. The pain in his face unnerved me. I felt a lump beginning to build in my throat. Can we walk? I asked while I could still speak. He didn't respond in any way. His face didn't change. I got out of the car, feeling unseen eyes behind the windows on me, and started walking toward the trees to the north. My feet squished in the damp grass and mud beside the road, and as that was the only sound, at first I thought he wasn't following me. But when I glanced around, he was right beside me, his feet having somehow found a less noisy path than mine. I felt better in the fringe of trees, where Sam couldn't possibly be watching. As we walked, I struggled for the right thing to say, but nothing came. I just got more and more angry that Jacob had gotten sucked in, that Billy had allowed this, that Sam was able to stand there so assured and calm. Jacob suddenly picked up the pace, striding ahead of me easily with his long legs and swinging around to face me, planting himself in my path so I would have to stop too. I was distracted by the overt grace of his movement. Jacob had been nearly as klutzy as me with his never-ending growth spurt. When did that change? But Jacob didn't give me time to think about it. Let's get this over with, he said in a hard, husky voice. I waited. He knew what I wanted. It's not what you think. His voice was abruptly weary. It's not what I thought. I was way off. So what is it then? He studied my face for a long moment, speculating. The anger never completely left his eyes. I can't tell you, he finally said. My jaw tightened and I spoke through my teeth. I thought we were friends. We were. There was a slight emphasis on the past tense. But you don't need friends anymore? I said sourly. You have Sam. Isn't that nice? You've always looked up to him so much. I didn't understand him before. And now you've seen the light. Hallelujah. It wasn't like I thought it was. This isn't Sam's fault. He's helping me as much as he can. His voice turned brittle. He looked over my head, past me, rage burning out from his eyes. He's helping you, I repeated dubiously, naturally. But Jacob didn't seem to be listening. He was taking deep, deliberate breaths, trying to calm himself. He was so mad that his hands were shaking. Jacob, please, I whispered. Won't you tell me what happened? Maybe I can help. No one can help me now. The words were a low moan. His voice broke. What did he do to you? I demanded, tears collecting in my eyes. I reached out to him as I had once before, stepping forward with my arms wide. This time he cringed away, holding his hands up defensively. Don't touch me, he whispered. Is Sam catching? I mumbled. The stupid tears had escaped the corners of my eyes. I wiped them away with the back of my hand and folded my arms across my chest. Stop blaming Sam. The words came out fast, like a reflex. His hands reached up to twist around the hair that was no longer there, and then fell limply at his sides. Then who should I blame? I retorted. He halfway smiled. It was a bleak, twisted thing. You don't want to hear that. The hell I don't, I snapped. I want to know, and I want to know now. You're wrong, he snapped back. Don't you dare tell me I'm wrong. I'm not the one who got brainwashed. Tell me now whose fault this all is, if it's not your precious Sam. You asked for it, he growled at me, eyes glinting hard. If you want to blame someone, why don't you point your finger at those filthy, reeking bloodsuckers that you love so much? My mouth fell open, and my breath came out with a whooshing sound. I was frozen in place, stabbed through with his double-edged words. The pain twisted in familiar patterns through my body, the jagged hole ripping me open from inside out. But it was second place, background music to the chaos of my thoughts. I couldn't believe that I'd heard him correctly. There was no trace of indecision in his face, only fury. My mouth still hung wide. I told you that you didn't want to hear it, he said. I don't understand what you mean, I whispered. He raised one eyebrow in disbelief. I think you understand exactly who I mean. You're not going to make me say it, are you? I don't like hurting you. I don't understand who you mean, I repeated mechanically. The Cullens, he said, slowly, drawing out the word, scrutinizing my face as he spoke it. I saw that. I can see in your eyes what it does to you when I say their name. I shook my head back and forth in denial, trying to clear it at the same time. How did he know this? How did it have anything to do with Sam's cult? Was it a gang of vampire haters? What was the point of forming such a society when no vampires lived in Forks anymore? Why would Jacob start believing the stories about the Cullens now? The evidence of them was long gone, never to return. It took me too long to come up with the correct response. Don't tell me you're listening to Billy's superstitious nonsense now, I said, with a feeble attempt at mockery. He knows more than I gave him credit for. Be serious, Jacob. He glared at me, his eyes critical. Superstitions aside, I said quickly, I still don't see what you're accusing the Cullens of. They left more than half a year ago. How can you blame them for what Sam's doing now? Sam isn't doing anything, Bella, and I know they're gone. But sometimes things are set in motion and then it's too late. What's set in motion? What's too late? What are you blaming them for? He was suddenly right in my face, his fury glowing in his eyes. For existing, he hissed. I was surprised and distracted as the warning words came in Edward's voice again, when I wasn't even scared. Quiet now, Bella. Don't push him, Edward cautioned in my ear. Ever since Edward's name had broken through the careful walls I'd buried it behind, I'd been unable to look it up again. It didn't hurt now, not during the precious seconds when I could hear his voice. Jacob was fuming in front of me, quivering with anger. I didn't understand why the Edward delusion was unexpectedly in my mind. Jacob was livid, but he was Jacob. There was no adrenaline, no danger. Give him a chance to calm down, Edward's voice insisted. I shook my head in confusion. You're being ridiculous, I told them both. Fine, Jacob answered, breathing deeply again. I won't argue it with you. It doesn't matter. Anyway, the damage is done. What damage? He didn't flinch as I shouted his words in his face. Let's head back. There's nothing more to say. I gaped. There's everything more to say. You haven't said anything yet. He walked past me, striding back toward the house. I ran into Quill today, I yelled after him. He paused mid-step, but didn't turn. You remember your friend, Quill, yeah? He's terrified. Jacob whirled to face me. His expression was pained. Quill was all he said. He's worried about you too. He's freaked out. Jacob stared past me with desperate eyes. I goaded him further. He's frightened that he's next. Jacob clutched at a tree for support, his face turning a strange shade of green under the red-brown surface. He won't be next, Jacob muttered to himself. He can't be. It's over now. This shouldn't still be happening. Why? Why? His fist slammed against the tree. It wasn't a big tree, slender and only a few feet taller than Jacob, but it still surprised me when the trunk gave way and snapped off loudly under his blows. Jacob stared at the sharp, broken point with shock that quickly turned to horror. I have to get back. He whirled and stalked away so swiftly that I had to jog to keep up. Back to Sam? It's one way of looking at it. It sounded like he said he was mumbling and facing away. I chased him back to the truck. Wait, I called as he turned toward the house. He spun around to face me, and I saw that his hands were shaking again. Go home, Bella. I can't hang out with you anymore. The silly, inconsequential hurt was incredibly potent. The tears welled up again. Are you breaking up with me? The words were all wrong, but they were the best way I could think to phrase what I was thinking. After all, what Jake and I had was more than any schoolyard romance. Stronger. He barked out a bitter laugh. Hardly. If that were the case, I'd say, let's stay friends. I can't even say that. Jacob, why? Sam won't let you have other friends? Please, Jake, you promised. I need you. The blank emptiness of my life before Jacob brought some semblance of reason back into it, reared up and confronted me. Loneliness choked in my throat. I'm sorry, Bella. Jacob said each word distinctly in a cold voice that didn't seem to belong to him. I didn't believe that this was really what Jacob wanted to say. It seemed like there was something else trying to be said through his angry eyes, but I couldn't understand the message. Maybe this wasn't about Sam at all. Maybe this had nothing to do with the Cullens. Maybe he was just trying to pull himself out of a hopeless situation. Maybe I should let him do that, if that's what was best for him. I should do that. It would be right. But I heard my voice escaping in a whisper. I'm sorry that I couldn't before. I wish I could change how I feel about you, Jacob. I was desperate, reaching, stretching the truth so far that it curved nearly into the shape of a lie. Maybe I would change, I whispered. Maybe if you gave me some time. Just don't quit on me now, Jake. I can't take it. His face went from anger to agony in a second. One shaking hand reached out toward me. No. Don't think like that, Bella, please. Don't blame yourself. Don't think this is your fault. This one's all me. I swear it's not about you. It's not you, it's me, I whispered. There's a new one. I mean it, Bella, I'm not. He struggled, his voice going even huskier as he fought to control his emotion. His eyes were tortured. I'm not good enough to be your friend anymore. Or anything else. I'm not what I was before. I'm not good. What? I stared at him, confused and appalled. What are you saying? You're much better than I am, Jake. You are good. Who told you that you aren't? Sam? It's a vicious lie, Jacob. Don't let him tell you that. I was suddenly yelling again. Jacob's face went hard and flat. No one had to tell me anything. I know what I am. You're my friend. That's what you are. Jake, don't. He was backing away from me. I'm sorry, Bella, he said again. This time it was a broken mumble. He turned and almost ran into the house. I was unable to move from where I stood. I stared at the little house. It looked too small to hold 4 large boys and 2 larger men. There was no reaction inside, no flutter at the edge of the curtain, no sound of voices or movement. It faced me, vacantly. The rain started to drizzle, stinging here and there against my skin. I couldn't take my eyes off the house. Jacob would come back. He had to. The rain picked up, and so did the wind. The drops were no longer falling from above. They slanted at an angle from the west. I could smell the brine from the ocean. My hair whipped in my face, sticking to the wet places and tangling in my lashes. I waited. Finally the door opened, and I took a step forward in relief. Billy rolled his chair into the doorframe. I could see no one behind him. Charlie just called, Bella. I told him you were on your way home. His eyes were full of pity. The pity made it final somehow. I didn't comment. I just turned robotically, climbed in my truck. I'd left the windows open and the seats were slick and wet. It didn't matter. I was already soaked. Not as bad. Not as bad. My mind tried to comfort me. It was true. This wasn't as bad. This wasn't the end of the world. Not again. This was just the end of what little peace there was left behind. That was all. Not as bad, I agreed, then added, but bad enough. I'd thought Jake had been healing the hole in me, or at least plugging it up, keeping it from hurting me so much. I'd been wrong. He'd just been carving out his own hole, so that now I was riddled like Swiss cheese. I wondered why I didn't crumble into pieces. Charlie was waiting on the porch. As I rolled to a stop, he walked out to meet me. Billy called. He said you got in a fight with Jake. Said you were pretty upset. He explained as he opened the door for me. Then he looked at my face. A kind of horrified recognition registered in his expression. I tried to feel my face from the inside out to know what he was seeing. My face felt empty and cold, and I realized what it would remind him of. That's not exactly how it happened, I muttered. Charlie put his arm around me and helped me out of the car. He didn't comment on my sodden clothes. Then what did happen? He asked when we were inside. He pulled the Afghan off the back of the sofa as he spoke and wrapped it around my shoulders. I realized I was still shivering. My voice was lifeless. Sam Uli says Jacob can't be my friend anymore. Charlie shot me a strange look. Who told you that? Jacob, I stated. Though that wasn't exactly what he had said, it was still true. Charlie's eyebrows pulled together. You really think there's something wrong with that Uli kid? I know there is. Jacob wouldn't tell me what, though. I could hear the water from my clothes dripping to the floor and splashing on the linoleum. I'm gonna go change. Charlie was lost in thought. Okay, he said absently. I decided to take a shower because I was so cold, but the hot water didn't seem to affect the temperature of my skin. I was still freezing when I gave up and shut the water off. In the sudden quiet, I could hear Charlie talking to someone downstairs. I wrapped a towel around me and cracked the bathroom door. Charlie's voice was angry. I'm not buying that. It doesn't make any sense. It was quiet then, and I realized he was on the phone. A minute passed. Don't you put this on Bella, Charlie suddenly shouted. I jumped. When he spoke again, his voice was careful, lower. Bella's made it very clear all along that she and Jacob were just friends. Well, if that was it, then why didn't you say so at first? No, Billy, I think she's right about this. Because I know my daughter. If she says Jacob was scared before... He was cut off mid-sentence. When he answered, he was almost shouting again. What do you mean I don't know my daughter as well as I think I do? He listened for a brief second, and his response was almost too low for me to hear. If you think I'm going to remind her about that, then you'd better think again. She's only just starting to get over it, and mostly because of Jacob, I think. If whatever Jacob has going on with this Sam character sends her back into that depression, then Jacob's going to have to answer to me. You're my friend, Billy, but this is hurting my family. There was another break for Billy to respond. You got that right. Those boys set one toe out of line and I'm going to know about it. We'll be keeping an eye on the situation, you can be sure of that. He was no longer Charlie. He was Chief Swan now. Fine. Yeah, goodbye. The phone slammed into the cradle. I tiptoed quickly across the hall into my room. Charlie was muttering angrily in the kitchen. So Billy was going to blame me. I was leading Jacob on. he'd finally had enough. It was strange. I'd feared that myself, but after the last thing Jacob had said this afternoon, I didn't believe it anymore. There was much more to this than an unrequited crush, and it surprised me that Billy would stoop to claiming that. It made me think that whatever secret they were keeping was bigger than I'd been imagining. At least Charlie was on my side now. I put my pajamas on and crawled into bed. Life seemed dark enough at the moment that I let myself cheat. The holes now were already aching. So why not? I pulled out the memory. Not a real memory, that would hurt too much, but the false memory of Edward's voice in my mind this afternoon, and played it over and over in my head until I fell asleep with the tears still streaming calmly down my empty face. It was a new dream tonight. Rain was falling and Jacob was walking soundlessly beside me, though beneath my feet the ground crunched like dry gravel. But he wasn't my Jacob. He was the new, bitter, graceful Jacob. The smooth suppleness of his walk reminded me of someone else, and as I watched, his features started to change. The russet colour of his skin leached away, leaving his face pale white like bone. His eyes turned gold, and then crimson, and then back to gold again. His shorn hair twisted in the breeze, turning bronze where the wind touched it. And his face became so beautiful that it shattered my heart. I reached for him, but he took a step away, raising his hands like a shield. And then Edward vanished. I wasn't sure when I woke in the dark if I'd just begun crying or if my tears had run while I slept, and simply continued now. I stared at my dark ceiling. I could feel that it was the middle of the night. I was still half asleep, maybe more than half. I closed my eyes wearily and prayed for a dreamless sleep. That's when I heard the noise that must have wakened me in the first place. Something sharp scraped along the length of my window with a high-pitched squeal, like fingernails against the glass. My eyes flew wide open with fright, though I was so exhausted and muddled that I was not yet positive whether I was awake or asleep. Something scratched against my window again, with the same thin, high-pitched sound. Confused and clumsy with sleep, I stumbled out of my bed to the window, blinking the lingering tears from my eyes on the way. A huge dark shape wobbled erratically on the other side of the glass, lurching toward me like it was going to smash right through. I staggered back, terrified, my throat closing around a scream. Victoria. She'd come for me. I was dead. Not Charlie too. I choked back the building scream. I would have to keep quiet through this, somehow. I had to keep Charlie from coming to investigate. And then a familiar husky voice called from the dark shape. Bella? It hissed. Ow! Damn it! Open the window! I needed 2 seconds to shake off the horror before I could move. But then I hurried to the window and shoved the glass out of the way. The clouds were dimly lit from behind, enough for me to make sense of the shapes. What are you doing? I gasped. Jacob was clinging precariously to the top of the spruce that grew in the middle of Charlie's little front yard. His weight had bowed the tree toward the house, and he now swung, his legs dangling 20 feet above the ground, not a yard away from me. The thin branches at the tip of the tree scraped against the side of the house with a grating squeal. "I'm trying to keep," he huffed, shifting his weight as the treetop bounced him. "My promise." I blinked my wet, blurry eyes, suddenly sure I was dreaming. "When did you ever promise to kill yourself falling out of Charlie's tree?" He snorted, unamused, swinging his legs to improve his balance. "Get out of the way," he ordered. "What?" He swung his legs again, backwards and forward, increasing his momentum. I realized what he was trying to do. "No, Jake?" But I ducked to the side because it was too late. With a grunt, he launched himself toward my open window. Another scream built in my throat as I waited for him to fall to his death, or at least maim himself against the wooden siding. To my shock, he swung agilely into my room, landing on the balls of his feet with a low thud. We both looked to the door automatically, holding our breath, waiting to see if the noise had woken Charlie. A short moment of silence passed, and we heard the muffled sound of Charlie's snore. A wide grin spread slowly across Jacob's face. He seemed extremely pleased with himself. It wasn't the grin that I knew and loved. It was a new grin, one that was a bitter mockery of his old sincerity, on the new face that belonged to Sam. That was a bit much for me. I'd cried myself to sleep over this boy. His harsh rejection had punched a painful new hole in what was left of my chest. He had left a new nightmare behind him, like an infection in a sore. The insult after the injury. And now he was here, in my room, smirking at me as if none of that had passed. Worse than that, even though his arrival had been noisy and awkward, it reminded me of when Edward used to sneak in through my window at night. The reminder picked viciously at the unhealed wounds. All of this, coupled with the fact that I was dog-tired, did not put me in a friendly mood. "Get out," I hissed, putting as much venom into the whispers as I could. He blinked, his face going blank with surprise. "No," he protested. "I came to apologize." "I don't accept." I tried to shove him back out the window. After all, if this was a dream, it wouldn't really hurt him. It was useless, though. I didn't budge him an inch. I dropped my hands quickly and stepped away from him. He wasn't wearing a shirt, though the air blowing in the window was cold enough to make me shiver, and it made me uncomfortable to have my hands on his bare chest. His skin was burning hot like his head had been the last time, like he was still sick with the fever. He didn't look sick. He looked huge. He leaned over me, so big that he blacked out the window, tongue-tied by my furious reaction. Suddenly, it was just more than I could handle. It felt as if all of my sleepless nights were crashing down on me en masse. I was so brutally tired that I thought I might collapse right there on the floor. I swayed unsteadily and struggled to keep my eyes open. "Bella?" Jacob whispered anxiously. He caught my elbow as I swayed again and steered me back to the bed. My legs gave out when I reached the edge, and I plopped into a limp heap on the mattress. "Hey, are you okay?" Jacob asked, worry creasing his forehead. I looked up at him, the tears not yet dried on my cheeks. Why in the world would I be okay, Jacob? Anguish replaced some of the bitterness in his face. "Right," he agreed, and took a deep breath. "Crap, well, I'm so sorry, Bella. The apology was sincere, no doubt about it, though there was still an angry twist to his features. Why did you come here? I don't want apologies from you, Jake. I know, he whispered, but I couldn't leave things the way I did this afternoon. That was horrible, I'm sorry. I shook my head wearily. I don't understand anything. I know, I want to explain. He broke off suddenly, his mouth open, almost like something had cut off his air. Then he sucked in a deep breath. But I can't explain, he said, still angry. I wish I could. I let my head fall into my hands. My question came out muffled by my arm. Why? He was quiet for a moment. I twisted my head to the side, too tired to hold it up, to see his expression. It surprised me. His eyes were squinted, his teeth clenched, his forehead wrinkled in effort. What's wrong? I asked. He exhaled heavily, and I realized he'd been holding his breath too. I can't do it, he muttered, frustrated. Do what? He ignored my question. Look, Bella, haven't you ever had a secret that you couldn't tell anyone? He looked at me with knowing eyes. My thoughts jumped immediately to the Cullens. I hoped my expression didn't look guilty. Something you felt like you had to keep from Charlie, from your mum. He pressed. Something you won't even talk about with me. Not even now. I felt my eyes tighten. I didn't answer his question, though I knew he would take that as confirmation. Can you understand that I might have the same kind of situation? He was struggling again, seeming to fight for the right words. Sometimes loyalty gets in the way of what you want to do. Sometimes it's not your secret to tell. I couldn't argue with that. He was exactly right. I had a secret that wasn't mine to tell, yet a secret I felt bound to protect. A secret that suddenly he seemed to know all about. I still didn't see how it applied to him, or Sam, or Billy. What was it to them, now the Cullens were gone? I don't know why you came here, Jacob, if you were just going to give me riddles instead of answers. I'm sorry, he whispered. This is so frustrating. We looked at each other for a long moment in the dark room, both our faces hopeless. The part that kills me, he said abruptly, is that you already know. I already told you everything. What are you talking about? He sucked in a startled breath and then leaned toward me, his face shifting from hopelessness to blazing intensity in a second. He stared fiercely into my eyes, and his voice was fast and eager. He spoke the words right into my face, his breath as hot as his skin. I think I see a way to make this work out, because you know this, Bella. I can't tell you, but if you guessed it, that would let me right off the hook. You want me to guess? Guess what? My secret. You can do it. You know the answer. I blinked twice, trying to clear my head. I was so tired. Nothing he said made sense. He took in my blank expression, and his face tensed with effort again. Hold on, let me see if I can give you some help. Whatever he was trying to do, it was so hard he was panting. Help? I asked, trying to keep up. My lids wanted to slip closed, but I forced them open. "Yeah," he said, breathing hard. "Like clues." He took my face in his enormous two warm hands and held it just a few inches from his. He stared into my eyes while he whispered as if to communicate something besides the words he spoke. "Remember the first day we met on the beach in La Push?" "Of course I do." "Tell me about it." I took a deep breath and tried to concentrate. "You asked about my truck." He nodded, urging me on. "We talked about the rabbit." "Keep going." "We went for a walk down the beach." My cheeks were growing warm under his palms as I remembered, but he wouldn't notice, hot as his skin was. I'd asked him to walk with me, flirting ineptly but successfully in order to pump him for information. He was nodding, anxious for more. My voice was nearly soundless. "You told me scary stories, Quileute legends." He closed his eyes and opened them again. "Yes." The word was tense, fervent, like he was on the edge of something vital. He spoke slowly, making each word distinct. "Do you remember what I said?" Even in the dark, he must be able to see the change in the color of my face. How could I ever forget that? Without realizing what he was doing, Jacob had told me exactly what I needed to know that day. That Edward was a vampire. He looked at me with eyes that knew too much. "Think hard," he told me. "Yes, I remember," I breathed. He inhaled deeply, struggling. "Do you remember all the story?" He couldn't finish the question. His mouth popped open like something had stuck in his throat. "All the stories?" I asked. He nodded, mutely. My head churned. Only one story really mattered. I knew he had begun with others, but I couldn't remember the inconsequential prelude, especially not while my brain was so clouded with exhaustion. I started to shake my head. Jacob groaned and jumped off the bed. He pressed his fists against his forehead and breathed fast and angry. "You know this. You know this," he muttered to himself. Jake, please, I'm exhausted. I'm no good at this right now. Maybe in the morning." He took a steadying breath and nodded. "Maybe it'll come back to you. I guess I understand why you only remember the one story," he added in a sarcastic, bitter tone. He plonked back onto the mattress beside me. "Do you mind if I ask you a question about that?" he asked, still sarcastic. "I've been dying to know." "Question about what?" I asked warily. "About the vampire story I told you." I stared at him with guarded eyes, unable to answer. He asked his question anyway. "Did you honestly not know?" he asked me, his voice turning husky. "Was I the one who told you what he was?" How did he know this? Why did he decide to believe? Why now? My teeth clenched together. I stared back at him. No intention of speaking. He could see that. "See what I mean about loyalty?" he murmured, even huskier. The same for me. Only worse. You can't imagine how tight I'm bound. I didn't like that. I didn't like the way his eyes closed as if he were in pain when he spoke of being bound. More than dislike. I realized I hated it. Hated anything that caused him pain. Hated it fiercely. Sam's face filled my mind. For me, this was all essentially voluntary. I protected the Cullen's secret out of love, unrequited but true. For Jacob, it didn't seem to be that way. "Isn't there any way for you to get free?" I whispered, touching the rough edge at the back of his shorn hair. His hands began to tremble, but he didn't open his eyes. "No, I'm in this for life. A life sentence." A bleak laugh. "Longer, maybe." "No, Jake," I moaned. "What if we ran away? Just you and me? What if we left home, left Sam behind?" "It's not something I can run away from, Bella." "I would run with you, though, if I could." His shoulders were shaking now, too. He took a deep breath. "Look, I've got to leave." "Why?" "For one thing, you look like you're going to pass out any second. You need your sleep. I need you firing on all pistons. You're gonna figure this out, you have to." "Why else?" He frowned. "I had to sneak out. I'm not supposed to see you. They've got to be wondering where I am." His mouth twisted. "Suppose I should go let them know." "You don't have to tell them anything," I hissed. "All the same, I will." The anger flashed hot inside me. "I hate them." Jacob looked at me with wide eyes, surprised. "No, Bella, don't hate the guys. It's not Sam's or any of the others' fault. I told you before, it's me. Sam's actually, well, incredibly cool. Jared and Paul are great too, though Paul's kind of... And Embry's always been my friend. Nothing's changed there. The only thing that hasn't changed. I feel really bad about the things I used to think about Sam. Sam was incredibly cool. I glared at him in disbelief, but let it go. "Then why aren't you supposed to see me?" I demanded. "It's not safe," he mumbled, looking down. His words sent a thrill of fear through me. Did he know that, too? Nobody knew that besides me. But he was right. It was the middle of the night, the perfect time for hunting. Jacob shouldn't be here in my room. If someone came for me, I had to be alone. "If I thought it was too risky," he whispered, "I wouldn't have come. But Bella," he looked at me again, "I made you a promise. I had no idea it would be so hard to keep, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to try." He saw the incomprehension in my face. "After that stupid movie," he reminded me, "I promised you I would never hurt you. So I really blew it this afternoon, didn't I?" "I know you didn't want to do it, Jake. It's okay." "Thanks, Bella." He took my hand. "I'm going to do what I can to be here for you, just like I promised." He grinned at me suddenly. The grin was not mine, nor Sam's, but some strange combination of the two. "It would really help if you could figure this out on your own, Bella. Put some honest effort into it." I made a weak grimace. "I'll try." and I'll try and see you soon." He sighed. "And they'll try to talk me out of it. Don't listen to them." "I'll try." He shook his head as if he doubted his success. "Come and tell me, as soon as you figure it out." Something occurred to him just then, something that made his hands shake. If you want to. Why wouldn't I want to see you?" His face turned hard and bitter. 100% the face that belonged to Sam. "Oh, I can think of a reason," he said in a harsh tone. "Look, I really have to go. Could you do something for me?" I just nodded, frightened for the change in him. "At least, call me. If you don't want to see me again, let me know if it's like that." "That won't happen." He raised one hand, cutting me off. "Just let me know." He stood and headed for the window. "Don't be an idiot, Jake," I complained. "You'll break your leg. Use the door. Charlie's not going to catch you." "I won't get hurt," he muttered. But he turned for the door. He hesitated as he passed me, staring at me with an expression like something was stabbing him. He held one hand out, pleading. I took his hand, and suddenly he yanked me, too roughly, right off the bed so that I thudded against his chest. "Just in case," he muttered against my hair, crushing me in a bear hug that about broke my ribs. "Can't breathe," I gasped. He dropped me at once, keeping one hand at my waist so I didn't fall over. He pushed me, more gently this time, back down on the bed. "Get some sleep, Bells. You gotta get your head working. I know you can do this. I need you to understand. I won't lose you, Bella. Not for this." He was at the door in one stride, opening it quietly and then disappearing through it. I listened for him to hit the squeaky step in the stairs, but there was no sound. I lay back on my bed, my head spinning. I was too confused, too worn out. I closed my eyes, trying to make sense of it, only to be swallowed up by unconsciousness so swiftly that it was disorientating. It was not the peaceful, dreamless sleep I'd yearned for. Of course not. I was in the forest again, and I started to wander the way I always did. I quickly became aware that this was not the same dream as usual. For one thing, I felt no compulsion to wander or to search. I was merely wandering out of habit, because that was what was usually expected of me here. This wasn't even the same forest. The smell was different, the light too. It smelled not like the damp earth of the woods, but like the brine of the ocean. I couldn't see the sky. Still, it seemed like the sun must be shining. The leaves above were bright jade green. This was the forest around the push. Near the beach there, I was sure of it. I knew if I found the beach, I'd be able to see the sun. So I hurried forward, following the faint sound of waves in the distance. And then Jacob was there. He grabbed my hand, pulling me back toward the blackest part of the forest. "Jacob, what's wrong?" I asked. His face was the frightened face of a boy. His hair was beautiful again, swept back into a ponytail on the nape of his neck. He yanked with all his strength, but I resisted. I didn't want to go in the dark. "Run, Bella. You have to run," he whispered, terrified. The abrupt wave of deja vu was so strong it nearly woke me up. I knew why I recognized this place now. It was because I'd been here before in another dream. 1,000,000 years ago, part of a different life entirely. This was the dream I'd had the night after I'd walked with Jacob on the beach. The first night I knew that Edward was a vampire. Reliving that day with Jacob must have dredged this dream out of my buried memories. Detached from the dream now, I waited for it to play out. A light was coming toward me from the beach. In just a moment, Edward would walk through the trees, his skin faintly glowing, his eyes black and dangerous. He would beckon to me and smile. He would be beautiful as an angel. His teeth would be pointed and sharp. But I was getting ahead of myself. Something else had to happen first. Jacob dropped my hand and yelped. Shaking and twitching, he fell to the ground at my feet. "Jacob," I screamed. But he was gone. In his place was an enormous red-brown wolf with dark, intelligent eyes. The dream veered off course like a train jumping the tracks. This was not the same wolf I'd dreamed of in another life. This was the great russet wolf I'd stood half a foot from in the meadow just a week ago. This wolf was gigantic, monstrous, bigger than a bear. This wolf stared intently at me, trying to convey something vital with his intelligent eyes. The black-brown, familiar eyes of Jacob Black. I woke, screaming at the top of my lungs. I almost expected Charlie to come check on me this time. This wasn't my usual screaming. I buried my head in my pillow and tried to muffle the hysterics that my screams were building into. I pressed the cotton tight against my face, wondering if I couldn't also somehow smother the connection I'd just made. But Charlie didn't come in, and eventually I was able to strangle the strange screeching coming out of my throat. I remembered it all now. Every word that Jacob had said to me that day on the beach. Even the part before he got to the vampires. The cold ones. Especially that first part. "Do you know any of our old stories? About where we came from? The Quiutes, I mean," he asked. "Not really," I admitted. "Well, there are lots of legends. Some of them claiming to date back to the flood, supposedly. The ancient Quiutes tied their canoes to the tops of the tallest trees on the mountain to survive. Like Noah in the Ark." He smiled then, to show me how little stock he put in the histories. "Another legend claims that we descended from wolves, and that the wolves are our brothers still. It's against tribal law to kill them. Then there are stories about the cold ones." His voice dropped a little lower. "The cold ones? Yes. There are stories of the cold ones as old as the wolf legends, and some much more recent. According to legend, my own great-grandfather knew some of them. He was the one who made the treaty that kept them off our land." Jacob rolled his eyes. "Your great-grandfather? He was a tribal elder, like my father. You see, the cold ones are the natural enemies of the wolf. Well, not the wolf really, but the wolves that turn into men. Like our ancestors. You would call them werewolves." "Werewolves have enemies?" "Only one." There was something stuck in my throat, choking me. I tried to swallow it down, but it was lodged there, unmoving. I tried to spit it out. "Werewolf," I gasped. Yes, that was the word that I was choking on. The whole world lurched, tilting the wrong way on its axis. What kind of a place was this? Could a world really exist where ancient legends went wandering around the borders of tiny, insignificant towns, facing down mythical monsters? Did this mean every impossible fairy tale was grounded somewhere in absolute truth? Was there anything sane or normal at all? Or was everything just magic and ghost stories? I clutched my head in my hands, trying to keep it from exploding. A small, dry voice in the back of my mind asked me what the big deal was. Hadn't I already accepted the existence of vampires long ago? And without all the hysterics that time? Exactly. I wanted to scream back at the voice. Wasn't one myth enough for anyone? Enough for a lifetime? Besides, there'd never been one moment that I wasn't completely aware that Edward Cullen was above and beyond the ordinary. It wasn't such a surprise to find out what he was, because he so obviously was something. But Jacob, who was just Jacob and nothing more than that. Jacob, my friend. Jacob, the only human I'd ever been able to relate to. And he wasn't even human. I fought the urge to scream again. What did this say about me? I knew the answer to that one. It said that there was something deeply wrong with me. Why else would my life be filled with characters from horror movies? Why else would I care so much about them that it would tear big chunks right out of my chest when they went off along their mythical ways? In my head, everything spun and shifted, rearranging so that things that had meant one thing before now meant something else. There was no cult. There had never been a cult, never been a gang. No, it was much worse than that. It was a pack of 5 mind-blowingly gigantic, multi-hued werewolves that had stalked right past me in Edward's Meadow. Suddenly, I was in a frantic hurry. I glanced at the clock. It was way too early, and I didn't care. I had to go to La Push now. I had to see Jacob, so he could tell me that I hadn't lost my mind altogether. I pulled on the first clean clothes I could find, not bothering to see if they matched, and took the stairs 2 at a time. I almost ran into Charlie as I skidded into the hallway headed for the door. "Where are you going?" he asked, as surprised to see me as I was to see him. "Do you know what time it is?" "Yeah, I have to go see Jacob. I thought this thing with Sam..." "That doesn't matter. I have to talk to him right now." "It's pretty early." He frowned when my expression didn't change. "Don't you want breakfast?" "Not hungry." The words flew through my lips. He was blocking my path to the exit. I considered ducking around him, making a run for it, but I knew I would have to explain that to him later. "I'll be back soon, okay?" Charlie frowned. "Straight to Jacob's house, right? No stops on the way?" "Of course not. Where would I stop?" My words were running together in my hurry. "I don't know," he admitted. "It's just... well, there's been another attack. The wolves again. It was real close to the resort by the hot springs. There's a witness this time. The victim was only a dozen yards from the road when he disappeared. His wife saw a huge grey wolf just a few minutes later while she was searching for him and ran for help." My stomach dropped, like I'd hit a corkscrew on a roller coaster. A wolf attacked him? There's no sign of him, just a little blood again. Charlie's face was pained. "The rangers are going out armed, taking armed volunteers. There's a lot of hunters who are eager to be involved. There's a reward being offered for wolf carcasses. It's going to mean a lot of firepower out there in that forest, and it worries me. He shook his head. When people get too excited, accidents happen. They're going to shoot the wolves? My voice shot through 3 octaves. What else can we do? What's wrong? He asked, his tense eyes studying my face. I felt faint. I must be whiter than usual. You aren't turning into a tree hugger on me, are you? I couldn't answer. If he hadn't been watching me, I would have put my head between my knees. I'd forgotten about the missing hikers, the bloody paw prints. I hadn't connected those facts to my first realization. Look, honey, don't let this scare you. Just stay in town or on the highway, no stops, okay? Okay, I repeated in a weak voice. I've got to go. I looked at him closely for the first time and saw that he had his gun strapped to his waist and hiking boots on. You aren't going out there after the wolves, are you, Dad? I've got to help, Bells. People are disappearing. My voice shot up again, almost hysterical now. No, don't go. It's too dangerous. I've got to do my job, kid. Don't be such a pessimist. I'll be fine. He turned for the door and held it open. You leaving? I hesitated, my stomach still spinning in uncomfortable loops. What could I say to stop him? I was too dizzy to think of a solution. Bells? Maybe it's too early to go to La Push, I whispered. I agree, he said, and he stepped out into the rain, shutting the door behind him. As soon as he was out of sight, I dropped to the floor and put my head between my knees. Should I go after Charlie? What would I say? And what about Jacob? Jacob was my best friend. I needed to warn him. If he really was I cringed and forced myself to think the word. Werewolf. And I knew it was true. I could feel it. Then people would be shooting at him. I needed to tell him and his friends that people would try to kill them if they went running around like gigantic wolves. I needed to tell them to stop. They had to stop. Charlie was out there in the woods. Would they care about that? I wondered. Up until now, only strangers had disappeared. Did that mean anything, or was it just chance? I needed to believe that Jacob at least would care about that. Either way, I had to warn him. Or did I? Jacob was my best friend, but was he a monster too? A real one? A bad one? Should I warn him? If he and his friends were murderers? If they were out slaughtering innocent hikers in cold blood? If they were truly creatures from a horror movie in every sense, would it be wrong to protect them? It was inevitable that I would have to compare Jacob and his friends to the Cullens. I wrapped my arms around my chest, fighting the whole while I thought of them. I didn't know anything about werewolves, clearly. I would have expected something closer to the movies. Big, hairy, half-men creatures or something, if I'd expected anything. So I didn't know what made them hunt, whether hunger or thirst or just desire to kill. It was hard to judge not knowing that. But it couldn't be worse than what the Cullens endured in their quest to be good. I thought of Esme. The tears started when I pictured her kind, lovely face. And how, as motherly and loving as she was, she'd had to hold her nose, all ashamed, and run from me when I was bleeding. It couldn't be harder than that. I thought of Carlyle, the centuries upon centuries that he had struggled to teach himself to ignore blood, so that he could save lives as a doctor. Nothing could be harder than that. The werewolves had chosen a different path. Now what should I choose? If it was anyone but Jacob, I thought to myself, shaking my head as I drove down the forest-lined highway to La Push. I still wasn't sure if I was doing the right thing, but I'd made a compromise with myself. I couldn't condone what Jacob and his friends, his pack, were doing. I understood now what he'd said last night, that I might not want to see him again. And I could have called him, as he'd suggested, but that felt cowardly. I owed him a face-to-face conversation at least. I would tell him to his face that I couldn't just overlook what was going on. I couldn't be friends with the killer and say nothing. Let the killing continue. That would make me a monster too. But I couldn't not warn him. I had to do what I could to protect him. I pulled up to the Black's house with my lips pressed together into a hard line. It was bad enough that my best friend was a werewolf. Did he have to be a monster too? The house was dark, no lights in the windows, but I didn't care if I woke them. My fist thudded against the front door with angry energy. The sound reverberated through the walls. "Come in," I heard Billy call after a minute, and a light flicked on. I twisted the knob. It was unlocked. Billy was leaning around an open doorway just off the little kitchen, a bathrobe around his shoulders, not in his chair yet. When he saw who it was, his eyes widened briefly and then his face turned stoic. "Well, good morning, Bella. What are you doing up so early?" "Hey, Billy. I need to talk to Jake. Where is he?" I don't really know," he lied, straight-faced. "Do you know what Charlie's doing this morning?" I demanded, sick of the stalling. "Should I?" "He and half the other men in town are all out in the woods with guns, hunting giant wolves." Billy's expression flickered, and then went blank. "So I'd like to talk to Jake about that, if you don't mind," I continued. Billy pursed his thick lips for a moment. "I'd bet he's still asleep," he finally said, nodding toward the tiny hallway off the front room. "He's out late a lot these days. Kid needs his rest. Probably you shouldn't wake him." "It's my turn," I muttered under my breath as I stalked to the hallway. Billy sighed. Jacob's tiny closet of a room was the only door in the yard-long hallway. I didn't bother to knock. I threw the door open. It slammed against the wall with a bang. Jacob, still wearing just the same black cut-off sweats he'd worn last night, was stretched diagonally across the double bed that took up all of his room, but for a few inches around the edges. Even on a slant, it wasn't long enough. His feet hung off the one end and his head off the other. He was fast asleep, snoring lightly with his mouth hanging open. The sound of the door hadn't even made him twitch. His face was peaceful with deep sleep, all the angry lines smoothed out. There were circles under his eyes that I hadn't noticed before. Despite his ridiculous size, he looked very young now, and very weary. Pity shook me. I stepped back out and shut the door quietly behind me. Billy stared with curious, guarded eyes as I walked slowly back into the front room. "I think I'll let him get some rest." Billy nodded. We gazed at each other for a minute. I was dying to speak to him about his part in this. What did he think of what his son had become? But I knew how he had supported Sam from the very beginning, and so I supposed the murders must not bother him. How he justified that to himself, I couldn't imagine. I could see many questions for me in his dark eyes, but he didn't voice them either. "Look," I said, breaking the loud silence. "I'll be down at the beach for a while. When he wakes up, tell him I'm waiting for him, okay?" Sure, Billy agreed. I wondered if he really would. Well, if he didn't, I'd tried, right? I drove down to First Beach and parked in the empty dirt lot. It was still dark. The gloomy pre-dawn of a cloudy day. And when I cut the headlights, it was hard to see. I had to let my eyes adjust before I could find the path that led through the tall hedge of weeds. It was colder here, with the wind whipping off the black water, and I shoved my hands deep into the pockets of my winter jacket. At least the rain had stopped. I paced down the beach toward the North Sea wall. I couldn't see St. James or the other islands, just the vague shape of the water's edge. I picked my way carefully across the rocks, watching out for driftwood that might trip me. I found what I was looking for before I realized I was looking for it. It materialized out of the gloom when it was just a few feet away. A long, bone-white driftwood tree stranded deep on the rocks. The roots twisted up at the seaward end like 100 brittle tentacles. I couldn't be sure that it was the same tree where Jacob and I had had our first conversation. A conversation that had begun so many different tangled threads of my life. But it seemed to be in about the same place. I sat down where I'd sat before and stared out across the invisible sea. Seeing Jacob like that, innocent and vulnerable in sleep, had stolen all my revulsion, dissolved all my anger. I still couldn't turn a blind eye to what was happening, like Billy seemed to. But I couldn't condemn Jacob for it either. Love didn't work that way, I decided. Once you cared about a person, it was impossible to be logical about them anymore. Jacob was my friend, whether he killed people or not, and I didn't know what I was going to do about that. When I pictured him sleeping so peacefully, I felt an overpowering urge to protect him. Completely illogical. Illogical or not, I brooded over the memory of his peaceful face, trying to come up with some answer, some way to shelter him, while the sky slowly turned grey. "Hi, Bella." Jacob's voice came from the darkness and made me jump. It was soft, almost shy, but I'd been expecting some forewarning from the noisy rocks, and it still startled me. I could see his silhouette against the coming sunrise. It looked enormous. "Jake?" He stood several paces away, shifting his weight from foot to foot anxiously. "Billy told me you came by. Didn't take you very long, did it? I knew you could figure it out." "Yeah, I remember the right story now," I whispered. It was quiet for a long moment, and though it was still too dark to see well, my skin prickled as if his eyes were searching my face. There must have been enough light for him to read my expression, because when he spoke again, his voice was suddenly acidic. "You could have just called," he said harshly. I nodded. "I know." Jacob started pacing along the rocks. If I listened very hard, I could just hear the gentle brush of his feet on the rocks, behind the sound of the waves. The rocks had clattered like castanets for me. "Why did you come?" he demanded, not halting his angry stride. I thought it would be better face to face. He snorted. Oh, much better. Jacob, I have to warn you. About the rangers and the hunters. Don't worry about it. We already know. Don't worry about it, I demanded in disbelief. Jake, they've got guns. They're setting traps and offering rewards, and we can take care of ourselves. He growled, still pacing. They're not going to catch anything. They're only making it more difficult. They'll start disappearing soon enough, too. Jake, I hissed. What? It's just a fact. My voice was pale with revulsion. How can you feel that way? You know these people. Charlie's out there. The thought made my stomach twist. He came to an abrupt stop. What more can we do? He retorted. The sun turned the clouds a silvery pink above us. I could see his expression now. It was angry, frustrated, betrayed. Could you, well, try to not be a werewolf? I suggested in a whisper. He threw his hands up in the air. Like I have a choice about it, he shouted. And how would that help anything, if you're worried about people disappearing? I don't understand you. He glared at me, his eyes narrowing and his mouth twisting into a snarl. You know what makes me so mad I could just spit? I flinched away from his hostile expression. He seemed to be waiting for an answer, so I shook my head. You're such a hypocrite, Bella. There you sit, terrified of me. How is that fair? His hands shook with anger. Hypocrite? How does being afraid of a monster make me a hypocrite? He groaned, pressing his trembling fists to his temples and squeezing his eyes shut. Would you listen to yourself? What? He took 2 steps toward me, leaning over me, glaring with fury. Well, I'm so sorry that I can't be the right kind of monster for you, Bella. I guess I'm just not as great as a bloodsucker, am I? I jumped to my feet and glared back. No, you're not, I shouted. It's not what you are, stupid. It's what you do. What's that supposed to mean? He roared, his entire frame quivering with rage. I was taken entirely by surprise when Edward's voice cautioned me. Be very careful, Bella, his velvet voice warned. Don't push him too far. You need to calm him down. Even the voice in my head was making no sense today. I listened to him. I would do anything for that voice. Jacob, I pleaded, making my tones soft and even. Is it really necessary to kill people, Jacob? Isn't there some other way? I mean, if vampires can find a way to survive without murdering people, couldn't you give it a try too? He straightened up with a jerk, like my words had sent an electric shock through him. His eyebrows shot up, and his eyes stared wide. Killing people? He demanded. What did you think we were talking about? He wasn't trembling anymore. He looked at me with half-hopeful disbelief. I thought we were talking about your disgust for werewolves. No, Jake, no, it's not that you're a wolf. That's fine, I promised him, and I knew as I said the words that I meant them. I really didn't care if he turned into a big wolf. He was still Jacob. If you could just find a way to not hurt people, that's all that upsets me. These are innocent people, Jake. People like Charlie. And I can't just look the other way while you... Is that all? Really? He interrupted me, a smile breaking across his face. You're just scared because I'm a murderer? That's the only reason? Isn't that reason enough? He started to laugh. Jacob Black, this is so not funny. Sure, he agreed, still chortling. He took one long stride and caught me in another vice-tight bear hug. You really, honestly don't mind that I morph into a giant dog? His voice joyful in my ear. No, I gasped. Can't breathe, Jake. He let me go, but took both my hands. I'm not a killer, Bella. I studied his face, and it was clear that this was the truth. Relief pulsed through me. Really? I asked. Really, he promised solemnly. I threw my arms around him. It reminded me of the first day with the motorcycles. He was bigger though, and I felt even more like a child now. Like that other time, he stroked my hair. Sorry I called you a hypocrite, he apologized. Sorry I called you a murderer, he laughed. I thought of something then, and pulled away from him so that I could see his face. My eyebrows furrowed in anxiety. What about Sam and the others? He shook his head, smiling like a huge burden had been removed from his shoulders. Of course not. Don't you remember what we call ourselves? The memory was clear. I'd just been thinking of that very day. Protectors? Exactly. But I don't understand. What's happening in the woods? The missing hikers, the blood. His face was serious, worried at once. We're trying to do our job, Bella. We're trying to protect them, but we're always just a little too late. Protect them from what? Is there really a bear out there too? Bella, honey, we only protect people from one thing. Our one enemy. It's the reason we exist. Because they do. I stared at him blankly for 1 second before I understood. Then the blood drained from my face, and a thin, wordless cry of horror broke through my lips. He nodded. I thought you of all people would realize what was really going on. Laurent, I whispered. He's still here. Jacob blinked twice and cocked his head to one side. Who's Laurent? I tried to sort out the chaos in my head so that I could answer. You know, you saw him in the meadow. You were there. The words came out in a wondering tone as it all sunk in. You were there and you kept him from killing me. Oh, the black-haired leech? He grinned. A tight, fierce grin. Was that his name? I shuddered. What were you thinking? He could have killed you, Jake. You don't realize how dangerous... Another laugh interrupted me. Bella, one lone vampire isn't much of a problem for a pack as big as ours. It was so easy it was hardly even fun. What was so easy? Killing the bloodsucker who was going to kill you. No, I don't count that towards the whole murder thing, he added quickly. Vampires don't count as people. I could only mouth the words. You killed Laurent. He nodded. Well, it was a group effort, he qualified. Laurent is dead? I whispered. His expression changed. You're not upset about that, are you? He was going to kill you. He was going for the kill, Bella. We were sure of that before we attacked. You know that, right? I know that. No, I'm not upset. I had to sit down. I stumbled back a step until I felt the driftwood against my calves and then sank down onto it. Laurent is dead. He's not coming back for me. You're not mad? He wasn't one of your friends or anything, was he? My friend? I stared up at him, confused and dizzy with relief. I started babbling, my eyes getting moist. No, Jake, I'm so relieved. I thought he was going to find me. I've been waiting for him every night, just hoping he'd stop with me and leave Charlie alone. I've been so frightened, Jacob, but how? He was a vampire. How did you kill him? He was so strong, so hard, like marble. He sat down next to me and put one big arm around me comfortingly. It's what we're made for, Bells. We're strong too. I wish you would have told me you were so afraid. You didn't need to be. You weren't around? I mumbled, lost in thought. Oh, right. Wait, Jake, I thought you knew though. Last night you said it wasn't safe for you to be in my room. I thought you knew that a vampire might be coming. Isn't that what you were talking about? He looked confused for a minute, and then he ducked his head. No, that's not what I meant. Then why didn't you think it was safe for you to be there? He looked at me with guilt-ridden eyes. I didn't say it wasn't safe for me. I was thinking of you. What do you mean? He looked down and kicked a rock. There's more than one reason I'm not supposed to be around you, Bella. I wasn't supposed to tell you our secret, for one thing. But the other part is that it's not safe for you. If I get too mad, too upset, you might get hurt. I thought about that carefully. When you were mad before, when I was yelling at you, you were shaking? Yeah. His face dropped even lower. That was pretty stupid of me. I have to keep a better hold of myself. I swore I wasn't going to get mad no matter what you said to me, but I just got so upset that I was going to lose you. That you couldn't deal with what I am. What would happen if you got too mad? I whispered. I'd turn into a wolf, he whispered back. You don't need a full moon? He rolled his eyes. Hollywood's version doesn't get much right. Then he sighed and was serious again. You don't need to be stressed out, Bells. We're going to take care of this, and we're keeping a special eye on Charlie and the others. We won't let anything happen to him. Trust me on that. Something very, very obvious, something I should have grasped at once. But I'd been so distracted by the idea of Jacob and his friends fighting with Laurent that I'd completely missed it at the time. Occurred to me only then, when Jacob used the present tense again. We're going to take care of this. It wasn't over. Laurent is dead, I gasped, and my entire body went ice cold. Bella? Jacob asked anxiously, touching my ashen cheek. If Laurent died a week ago, then someone else is killing people now. Jacob nodded, his teeth clenched together, and he spoke through them. There were two of them. We thought his mate would want to fight us. In our stories, they usually get pretty pissed off if you kill their mate. But she just keeps running away, and then coming back again. If we could figure out what she was after, it'd be easier to take her down. But she makes no sense. She keeps dancing around the edges like she's testing our defenses. Looking for a way in, but in where? Where does she want to go? Sam thinks she's trying to separate us so she'll have a better chance. His voice faded until it sounded like it was coming through a long tunnel. I couldn't make out the individual words anymore. My forehead dewed with sweat, and my stomach rolled like I had the stomach flu again, exactly like I had the flu. I turned away from him quickly and leaned over the tree trunk, my body convulsed with useless heaves, my empty stomach contracting with horrified nausea, though there was nothing in it to expel. Victoria was here, looking for me, killing strangers in the woods where Charlie was searching. My head spun sickeningly. Jacob's hands caught my shoulders, kept me from sliding forward onto the rocks. I could feel his hot breath on my cheek. Bella, what's wrong? Victoria, I gasped as soon as I could catch my breath around nauseous spasms. In my head, Edward snarled in fury at the name. I felt Jacob pull me up from my slump. He draped me awkwardly across his lap, laying my limp head against his shoulder. He struggled to balance me to keep me from sagging over, one way or the other. He brushed the sweaty hair back from my face. Who? Jacob asked. Can you hear me? Bella? Bella? She wasn't Laurent's mate, I moaned into his shoulder. They were just old friends. Do you need some water? Doctor? Tell me what to do, he demanded, frantic. I'm not sick. I'm scared, I explained in a whisper. The word scared didn't really seem to cover it. Jacob patted my back. Scared of this, Victoria? I nodded, shuddering. Victoria is the red-haired female? I trembled again and whimpered. Yes. How do you know she wasn't his mate? Laurent told me. James was her mate, I explained, automatically flexing the hand with the scar. He pulled my face around, holding it steady in his big hand. He stared intently into my eyes. Did he tell you anything else, Bella? This is important. Do you know what she wants? Of course, I whispered. She wants me. His eyes flipped wide, then narrowed into slits. Why? He demanded. Edward killed James, I whispered. Jacob held me so tightly that there was no need for me to clutch at the hole. He kept me in one piece. She did get pissed off, but Laurent said she thought it was fairer to kill me than Edward. Mate for mate. She didn't know. Still doesn't know, I guess, that I swallowed hard. That things aren't like that with us anymore. Not for Edward, anyway. Jacob was distracted by that, his face torn between several different expressions. Is that what happened? Why the Cullens left? I'm nothing but a human after all. Nothing special, I explained, shrugging weakly. Something like a growl, not a real growl, just a human approximation rumbled in Jacob's chest under my ear. If that idiot bloodsucker's honestly stupid enough. Please, I moaned. Please don't. Jacob hesitated, then nodded once. "This is important," he said again, his face all business now. "This is exactly what we needed to know. We've got to tell the others right away." He stood, pulling me to my feet. He kept 2 hands on my waist until he was sure I wasn't going to fall. "I'm okay," I lied. He traded his hold on my waist for one of my hands. "Let's go." He pulled me back toward the truck. "Where are we going?" I asked. "I'm not sure yet," he admitted. "I'll call a meeting. Hey, wait here for just a minute, okay?" He leaned me against the side of the truck and released my hand. "Where are you going?" "I'll be right back," he promised. He turned and sprinted through the parking lot, across the road, and into the bordering forest. He flitted into the trees, swift and sleek as a deer. "Jacob!" I yelled after him hoarsely, but he was already gone. It was not a good time to be left alone. Seconds after Jacob was out of sight, I was hyperventilating. I dragged myself into the cab of the truck and mashed the locks down at once. It didn't make me feel any better. Victoria was already hunting me. It was just luck that she hadn't found me yet. Just luck and 5 teenage werewolves. I exhaled sharply. No matter what Jacob said, the thought of him coming anywhere close to Victoria was horrifying. I didn't care what he could turn into when he got mad. I could see her in my head. Her face wild. Her hair like flames. Deadly. Indestructible. But according to Jacob, Laurent was gone. Was that really possible? Edward, I clutched automatically at my chest, had told me how difficult it was to kill a vampire. Only another vampire could do the job. Yet Jake said this was what werewolves were made for. He said they were keeping a special eye on Charlie, that I should trust the werewolves to keep my father safe. How could I trust that? None of us were safe. Jacob, the very least of all, if he was trying to put himself between Victoria and Charlie. Between Victoria and me. I felt like I might be about to throw up again. A sharp rap on the truck's window made me yelp in terror. But it was just Jacob. Back already. I unlocked the door with trembling, grateful fingers. "You're really scared, aren't you?" he asked as he climbed in. I nodded. "Don't be. We'll take care of you. And Charlie too, I promise." "The idea of you finding Victoria is scarier than the idea of her finding me," I whispered. He laughed. "You've got to have a little more confidence in us than that. It's insulting." I just shook my head. I'd seen too many vampires in action. "Where did you go just now?" I asked. He pursed his lips and said nothing. "What, is it a secret?" He frowned. "Not really. It's kind of weird though. I don't want to freak you out." "I'm sort of used to weird at this point, you know?" I tried to smile without much success. Jacob grinned back easily. Guess he'd have to be. "Okay, see, when we're wolves, we can hear each other." My eyebrows pulled down in confusion. "Not hear sounds," he went on, "but we can hear thoughts. Each other's anyway. No matter how far away we are from each other. Really helps when we hunt, but it's a big pain otherwise. It's embarrassing, having no secrets like that. Freaky, eh?" Is that what you meant last night? When you said you'd tell them you'd seen me, even though you didn't want to? You're quick. Thanks. You're also very good with weird. I thought that would bother you. It's not... Well, you're not the first person I've known who could do that, so it doesn't seem so weird to me. Really? Wait, are you talking about your bloodsuckers? I wish you wouldn't call them that. He laughed. Whatever. The Cullens, then. Just Edward. I pulled one arm surreptitiously around my torso. Jacob looked surprised. Unpleasantly so. I thought those were just stories. I've heard legends about vampires who could do extra stuff. But I thought that was just a myth. Is anything just a myth anymore? I asked him wryly. He scowled. Guess not. Okay, we're going to meet Sam and the others at the place we go to ride our bikes. I started the truck and headed back up the road. So, did you just turn into a wolf now to talk to Sam? I asked, curious. Jacob nodded, seeming embarrassed. I kept it real short. I tried not to think about you so they wouldn't know what was going on. I was afraid Sam would tell me I couldn't bring you. That wouldn't have stopped me. I couldn't get rid of my perception of Sam as the bad guy. My teeth clenched together whenever I heard his name. Well, it would have stopped me, Jacob said, morose now. Remember how I couldn't finish my sentences last night? How I couldn't just tell you the whole story? Yeah, you looked like you were choking on something. He chuckled darkly. Close enough. Sam told me I couldn't tell you. He's the head of the pack, you know. He's the alpha. When he tells us to do something, or not to do something, when he really means it, we can't just ignore him. Weird, I muttered. Very, he agreed. It's kind of a wolf thing. Huh, was the best response I could think of. Yeah, there's loads of stuff like that. Wolf things. I'm still learning. I can't imagine what it was like for Sam, trying to deal with this alone. Sucks bad enough to go through it with a whole pack for support. Sam was alone? Yeah. Jacob's voice lowered. When I changed, it was the most horrible, the most terrifying thing I've ever been through. Worse than anything I could have imagined. But I wasn't alone. There were voices there in my head telling me what had happened and what I had to do. That kept me from losing my mind. But Sam, he shook his head. Sam had no help. This was going to take some adjusting. When Jacob explained it like that, it was hard not to feel compassion for Sam. I had to keep reminding myself that there was no reason to hate him anymore. Will they be angry that I'm with you? I asked. He made a face. Probably. Maybe I shouldn't. No, it's okay, he assured me. You know a ton of things that can help us. It's not like you're just some ignorant human. You're like a spy or something. You've been behind enemy lines. I frowned to myself. Was that what Jacob would want from me? Insider information to help them destroy their enemies. I wasn't a spy, though. I hadn't been collecting that kind of information. Already his words made me feel like a traitor. But I wanted him to stop Victoria, didn't I? No. I did want Victoria to be stopped, preferably before she tortured me to death or ran into Charlie or killed another stranger. I just didn't want Jacob to be the one to stop her. Or rather to try. I didn't want Jacob within 100 miles of her. Like, The stuff about the mind-reading bloodsucker, he continued, oblivious to my reverie. That's the kind of thing we need to know about. It really sucks that those stories are true. Makes everything more complicated. Hey, do you think this Victoria can do anything special? I don't think so. I hesitated, and then sighed. He would have mentioned it. He? Oh, you mean Edward. Oh, sorry. I forgot. You don't like to say his name, or hear it. I squeezed my midsection, trying to ignore the throbbing around the edges of my chest. Not really, no. Sorry. How do you know me so well, Jacob? Sometimes it's like you can read my mind. Nah, I just pay attention. We were on the little dirt road where Jacob had first taught me to ride the motorcycle. This good? I asked. Sure. I pulled over and cut the engine. You're still pretty unhappy, aren't you? He murmured. I nodded, staring unseeingly into the gloomy forest. Did you ever think that maybe you're better off? I inhaled slowly, and then let my breath out. No, because he wasn't the best. Please, Jacob, I interrupted, begging into a whisper. Could we please not talk about this? I can't stand it. Okay. He took a deep breath. Sorry I said nothing. Don't feel bad. If things were different, it would be nice to finally be able to talk to someone about it. He nodded. Yeah. I had a hard time keeping a secret from you for 2 weeks. It must be hell not to be able to talk to anyone. Hell, I agreed. Jacob sucked in a sharp breath. They're here. Let's go. Are you sure? I asked while he popped his door open. Maybe I shouldn't be here. They'll deal with it, he said. And then he grinned. Who's afraid of the big bad wolf? Ha ha, I said. But I got out of the truck, hurrying around the front end to stand close beside Jacob. I remembered only too clearly the giant monsters in the meadow. My hands were trembling like Jacob's had been before, but with fear rather than rage. Jacob took my hand and squeezed it. Here we go. I cowered into Jacob's side, my eyes scanning the forest for the other werewolves. When they appeared, striding out from between the trees, they weren't what I was expecting. I'd gotten the image of the wolves stuck in my head. These were just 4 really big, half-naked boys. Again, they reminded me of brothers, quadruplets. Something about the way they moved almost in synchronization to stand across the road from us. The way they all had the same long, round muscles under the same red-brown skin. The same cropped black hair. And the way their expressions altered at exactly the same moment. They started out curious and cautious. When they saw me there, half hidden beside Jacob, they all became furious in the same second. Sam was still the biggest, though Jacob was getting close to catching up with him. Sam didn't really count as a boy. His face was older. Not in the sense of lines or signs of aging, but in the maturity, the patience of his expression. What have you done, Jacob? He demanded. One of the others, one I didn't recognize, Jared or Paul, thrust past Sam and spoke before Jacob could defend himself. Why can't you just follow the rules, Jacob? He yelled, throwing his arms in the air. What the hell are you thinking? Is she more important than everything? Than the whole tribe? Than the people getting killed? She can help, Jacob said quietly. Help, the angry boy shouted. His arms began to quiver. Oh, that's likely. I'm sure the leech lover's just dying to help us out. Don't talk about her like that, Jacob shouted back, stung by the boy's criticism. A shudder rippled through the other boy, along his shoulders and down his spine. Paul, relax, Sam commanded. Paul shook his head back and forth, not in defiance, but as though he were trying to concentrate. Jeez, Paul, one of the other boys, probably Jared, muttered. Get a grip. Paul twisted his head toward Jared, his lips curling back in irritation. He shifted his glare in my direction. Jacob took a step to put himself in front of me. That did it. Right. Protect her, Paul roared in outrage. Another shudder, a convulsion, heaved through his body. He threw his head back, a real growl tearing from between his teeth. Paul, Sam and Jacob shouted together. Paul seemed to fall forward, vibrating violently. Halfway to the ground there was a loud ripping noise, and the boy exploded. Dark silver fur blew out from the boy, coalescing into a shape more than 5 times his size. A massive, crouched shape, ready to spring. The wolf's muzzle wrinkled back over his teeth, and another growl rolled through his colossal chest. His dark, enraged eyes focused on me. In the same second, Jacob was running across the road, straight for the monster. Jacob, I screamed. Mid-stride, a long tremor shivered down Jacob's spine. He leaped forward, diving headfirst into the empty air. With another sharp, tearing sound, Jacob exploded too. He burst out of his skin. Shreds of black and white cloth blasted up into the air. It happened so quickly that if I'd blinked, I'd have missed the entire transformation. 1 second it was Jacob diving into the air, and then it was the gigantic russet brown wolf, so enormous that I couldn't make sense of its mass, somehow fitting inside Jacob, charging the crouched silver beast. Jacob met the other werewolves' attack head-on. Their angry snarls echoed like thunder off the trees. The black and white scraps, the remains of Jacob's clothes, fluttered to the ground where he'd disappeared. Jacob, I screamed again, staggering forward. Stay where you are, Bella, Sam ordered. It was hard to hear him over the roar of the fighting wolves. They were snapping, tearing at each other, their sharp teeth flashing toward each other's throats. The Jacob wolf seemed to have the upper hand. He was visibly bigger than the other wolf, and it looked like he was stronger too. He rammed his shoulder against the grey wolf again and again, knocking him back toward the trees. Take her to Emily's, Sam shouted toward the other boys, who were watching the conflict with rapt expressions. Jacob had successfully shoved the grey wolf off the road, and they were disappearing into the forest. The sound of their snarls was still loud. Sam ran after them, kicking off his shoes on the way. As he darted into the trees, he was quivering from head to toe. The growling and snapping was fading into the distance. Suddenly the sound cut off, and it was very quiet on the road. One of the boys started laughing. I turned to stare at him. My wide eyes felt frozen, like I couldn't even blink them. The boy seemed to be laughing at my expression. "Well, there's something you don't see every day," he snickered. His face was vaguely familiar, thinner than the others. Embry cool. "I do," the other boy, Jared, grumbled. "Every single day." Paul doesn't lose his temper every day," Embry disagreed, still grinning. "Maybe 2 out of 3. Jared stopped to pick something white up off the ground. He held it up toward Embry. It dangled in limp strips from his hand. "Totally shredded," Jared said. "Billy said this was the last pair he could afford. Guess Jacob's going barefoot now." "This one survived," Embry said, holding up a white sneaker. "Jake can hop," he added, with a laugh. Jared started collecting various pieces of fabric from the dirt. "Get Sam's shoes, will you? All the rest of this is headed for the trash." Embry grabbed the shoes and jogged into the trees where Sam had disappeared. He was back in a few seconds with a pair of cut-off jeans draped over his arm. Jared gathered the torn remnants of Jacob's and Paul's clothes, wadded them into a ball. Suddenly he seemed to remember me. He looked at me carefully, assessing. "Hey, you're not going to faint or puke or anything?" he demanded. "I don't think so," I gasped. "You don't look so good. Maybe you should sit down." "Okay," I mumbled. For the second time in one morning, I put my head between my knees. "Jake should have warned us," Embry complained. "He shouldn't have brought his girlfriend into this. What did he expect?" "Well, the wolf's out of the bag now," Embry sighed. "Way to go, Jake." I raised my head to glare at the 2 boys who seemed to be taking this all so lightly. "Aren't you worried about them at all?" I demanded. Embry blinked once in surprise. "Worried? Why?" "They could hurt each other." Embry and Jared guffawed. "I hope Paul gets a mouthful of him," Jared said. "Teach him a lesson." I blanched. "Yeah, right," Embry disagreed. "Did you see Jake? Even Sam couldn't have phased on the fly like that. He saw Paul losing it, and it took him, what, half a second to attack? The boy's got a gift." "Paul's been fighting longer. I'll bet you $10 he leaves a mark." "You're on. Jake's a natural. Paul doesn't have a prayer." They shook hands, grinning. I tried to comfort myself with their lack of concern, but I couldn't drive the brutal image of the fighting werewolves from my head. My stomach churned, sore and empty. My head ached with worry. "Let's go see Emily. You know, she'll have food waiting." Embry looked down at me. "Mind giving us a ride?" "No problem." I choked. Jared raised one eyebrow. "Maybe you'd better drive, Embry. She still looks like she might hurl." "Good idea. Where are the keys?" Embry asked me. "Ignition." Embry opened the passenger side door. "In you go," he said cheerfully, hauling me up from the ground with one hand and stuffing me into my seat. He appraised the available space. "You'll have to ride in the back," he told Jared. "That's fine. I got a weak stomach. I don't want to be in there when she blows." "I bet she's tougher than that. She runs with vampires." $5? Jared asked. "Done. I feel guilty taking your money like this." Embry got in and started the engine while Jared leapt agilely into the bed. As soon as his door was closed, Embry muttered to me, "Don't throw up, okay? I've only got a 10, and if Paul got his teeth into Jacob..." Okay, I whispered. Embry drove us back toward the village. Hey, how did Jake get around the injunction anyway? The what? The order. You know, not to spill the beans. How did he tell you about this? Oh, that, I said, remembering Jacob trying to choke out the truth to me last night. He didn't. I guessed right. Embry pursed his lips, looking surprised. Suppose that would work. Where are we going? I asked. Emily's house. She's Sam's girlfriend? No, fiancé now, I guess. They'll meet us back there after Sam gives it to them for what just happened. And after Paul and Jake scrounge up some new clothes, if Paul even has any left. Does Emily know about... Yeah, and hey, don't stare at her. That bugs Sam. I frowned at him. Why would I stare? Embry looked uncomfortable. Like you saw just now, hanging out around werewolves has its risks. He changed the subject quickly. Hey, are you okay about the whole thing with the black-haired bloodsucker in the meadow? It didn't look like he was a friend of yours, but... Embry shrugged. No, he wasn't my friend. That's good. We didn't want to start anything. Break the treaty, you know. Oh yeah, Jake told me about the treaty once, a long time ago. Why would killing LaRon break the treaty? LaRon, he repeated, snorting, like he was amused the vampire had had a name. Well, we were technically on Cullen turf. We're not allowed to attack any of them, the Cullens at least, off our land, unless they break the treaty first. We didn't know if the black-haired one was a relative of theirs or something. Looked like you knew him. How would they go about breaking the treaty? If they bite a human. Jake wasn't so keen on the idea of letting it go that far. Oh, thanks. I'm glad you didn't wait. Our pleasure. He sounded like he meant that in a literal sense. Embry drove past the easternmost house on the highway, before turning off onto a narrow dirt road. Your truck is slow, he noted. Sorry. At the end of the lane was a tiny house that had once been grey. There was only one narrow window beside the weathered blue door, but the window box under it was filled with bright orange and yellow marigolds, giving the whole place a cheerful look. Embry opened the truck door and inhaled. Emily's cooking. Jared jumped out of the back of the truck and headed for the door, but Embry stopped him with one hand on his chest. He looked at me meaningfully and cleared his throat. I don't have my wallet on me, Jared said. That's okay. I won't forget. They climbed up the one step and entered the house without knocking. I followed, timidly, after them. Thank you for listening to this part of New Moon. If you'd like to hear the next episode and this entire audiobook right now, then join me on Patreon at patreon.com/downtosleep. Before you head out, please hit that like and subscribe, and if you need some more free readings tonight, check out the channel to find another book to listen to. Until next time, good night.